The kerosene flames rose so high that pilots reported seeing the glow from 15 miles away. By the time Sheriff Clayton Moore reached Pine Hollow Church on that September morning in 1975, the screaming had stopped. What remained were tire tracks, spent shell casings, and the smell of burning wood mixed with something far worse. 10 men had entered that church the night before. 10 men would never leave, and the question that would haunt Knott County for the next 50 years wasn't who killed them, it was whether they'd killed themselves. Junior Combs checked his shotgun one final time at 8:47 a.m., never knowing he had exactly 2 hours and 31 minutes left to live. His younger brother Dwayne sat beside him in the church pew, working the bolt on their father's deer rifle with trembling hands. Outside, 20 Sloan men were loading weapons into trucks, preparing to answer an insult with violence. And 3 miles away, Earl Combs stood on his porch drinking cold coffee, listening to the mountains, waiting for the explosion he knew was coming. Because in these hills, when honor dies, men follow. Knott County, Kentucky existed like a scar across eastern Appalachia in 1975. 17,000 people scattered across 352 square miles of mountains so steep that roads washed out with every hard rain. The county seat, Hindman, was barely a crossroads. A courthouse, a general store, 3 churches, and the quiet understanding that certain family names didn't mix. Combs and Sloan. Those 2 names had been bleeding into each other since 1945, when a boundary dispute over timber rights turned into a fistfight that turned into a shooting that turned into 30 years of bodies. By 1972, 7 people were dead. 3 Combs men, including Junior's uncle Raymond, shot through the throat in 1968. 4 Sloans, including Virgil's oldest son Marcus, killed at 22 with a wife 2 months pregnant. The baby grew up without ever knowing his father, raised on stories of how his grandfather Virgil had tried to stop the killing. On May 17, 1972, Earl Combs and Virgil Sloan had stood in Pine Hollow Baptist Church before 40 witnesses and shaken hands. They'd promised God and community that the blood would stop. They'd meant it with every fiber of their being. 3 years of fragile peace followed. 3 years where men crossed paths in town without reaching for weapons. 3 years where children played without learning to hate. But peace is a living thing. It requires feeding, constant attention, the willingness to swallow pride every single day. And in July 1975, when a logging company offered $4,000 for timber rights on disputed land, that peace began to starve. The property line had never been properly surveyed. Both families had deeds from the 1920s describing boundaries that no longer existed, beginning at the old beech tree, running northward along the creek. But the beech tree was gone, the creek had changed course, and the county records office had burned in 1933, taking the truth with it. Earl proposed splitting the money, 50-50. Virgil said the land was Sloan land, always had been. Their voices rose on Earl's porch that July afternoon. Ida Sloan came out and asked them both to pray on it. They agreed to meet with a pastor to settle it Christian-like. But then Junior got involved. On August 3rd, Junior and 2 Combs cousins drove up to the disputed timber and started marking trees. They ran into Chester Sloan, Virgil's son, 25 years old, hot-headed, carrying his father's broken nose from a mining accident and his grandfather's temper like genetic inheritance. Words were exchanged. Chester shoved Junior. Junior swung and broke Chester's nose, blood spraying across August leaves. Chester reached for the knife on his belt, but his cousins pulled him back. "Your daddy's truce is dead, Combs." Chester spat through the blood. "You just killed it." The logging company withdrew their offer the next day, sensing trouble they wanted no part of. Now both families were staring at each other across an invisible property line with nothing to show but fresh hatred and the taste of blood. Earl tried reasoning with his son. Junior told him he was tired of living like a coward, tired of people whispering that Earl had bent knee, had begged for peace like some kind of defeated dog. Chester told his father the same thing from the opposite side. That respect mattered, that the commies needed to learn their place. September brought cooler nights and whispers. Someone saw Junior buying ammunition at Morrison's Sporting Goods in Hazard, 30 miles away, far enough that nobody would connect it. Someone else spotted Chester driving past Combes Land after dark, headlights off, windows down, watching. The women started keeping children closer. The men started carrying guns everywhere, even to church. The truce was broken in everything but name. On September 15th, Junior called a meeting at Pine Hollow Church. Not at his father's house. Earl would have stopped it. He contacted 9 other young commies men, all in their 20s and 30s, all sons and cousins who'd grown up in the shadow of 7 graves. They gathered at 8 p.m., bringing hunting rifles and shotguns, their father's pistols, boxes of ammunition. They sat in wooden pews beneath the cross and planned how to end this once and for all. They didn't know that Virgil's nephew had been walking the ridge above, checking traps, counting trucks, watching men enter with weapons. They didn't know he'd driven straight to Virgil's house to sound the alarm. By 10 p.m., 20 Sloan men were loading into pickup trucks, faces grim, knowing exactly what they had to do. Junior Combes was making his case for war inside that church, unaware that his last peaceful sunrise was already 12 hours behind him. He spoke about honor, about family, about how their fathers had chosen shame, and now it was their generation's job to reclaim what had been lost. His brother Dway asked, "You think Daddy would understand?" Junior didn't answer. He couldn't, because in his heart he knew Earl Combes would be burying his sons by morning. Sunday, September 28th arrived clear and cold. At the Sloan house, Ida was in the kitchen by 6:30, preparing Sunday dinner. The smell of biscuits filled the small home. Her grandson, Marcus's boy, now 5 years old, played on the porch with his cousins, their laughter carrying through open windows. Virgil sat at the kitchen table, Bible open but unread, rifle leaning against the wall where it had stood for 3 days. He'd barely slept. But morning had come peacefully, and the church bell from Pine Hollow rang clear through mountain air, calling the faithful to worship. 3 miles away, Junior and 9 men were loading weapons into 4 trucks. Earl Combes stood on his porch, watching them go, his wife Opal behind him crying, begging them not to leave. Junior looked back once at his father, saw the old man's face, saw disappointment and fear and the terrible understanding that peace had failed. Then he drove away. At 8:47 a.m., Junior's Ford crested the ridge above Pine Hollow Church. Behind him, 3 more trucks pulled up in a line. The church stood alone in its clearing, white clapboard walls, simple wooden cross above the door. The same building where his father and Virgil had shaken hands 3 years ago. "This is where we waited before," Junior said to Dway. "This is where we'll wait again. Let them come to us." They forced the door open with a crowbar, splintering the lock. Inside smelled of old hymnals and lemon oil. They positioned themselves at windows, checking sight lines, loading weapons, settling in. At 8:52 a.m., Reverend Harlan Fields arrived and walked through that broken door into nightmare. 10 armed men in his sanctuary, preparing for battle. He recognized every face, had baptized half of them. "Boys," his voice cracked. "Dear God, what are you doing?" "Reverend, you need to leave," Junior said, not looking at him. "This doesn't concern you. This is God's house. Then God can judge us later. But right now, you leave or you stay. And if you stay, you're part of what happens." Harlan Fields walked out at 8:57 a.m. His hands shook so badly he could barely grip his steering wheel. Fear, simple human fear, had driven him away. He would carry that shame until his death 20 years later. By 9:15, he was on the phone to Sheriff Moore. By 9:30, word reached Virgil Sloan's house. And Virgil, who'd been waiting 3 days for war to come to him, realized it had come to different ground. At 10:05 a.m., Sloan trucks rolled down the dirt road toward Pine Hollow. 20 men fanned out, parking in a semicircle, blocking the only exit. Virgil stood in the open, rifle across his chest, not aimed but ready. "Junior commands." His voice carried across the clearing. "You're surrounded. Put down your weapons. We can end this now." Inside, Junior stood back from the window. His brother's face was pale. The others suddenly understood they'd chosen a trap. "End this?" Junior shouted back. "You mean surrender? Bend knee like my daddy did? Your daddy saved lives. Don't throw that away. It's already gone." The words hung in morning air. Then Chester Sloan, 25 years old, his nose still purple from Junior's punch, raised his rifle and fired. The bullet shattered a window, missing Dway by inches. Junior brought his shotgun to the window and returned fire. The clearing erupted. For 4 minutes, sustained gunfire echoed off the mountains. Men who'd grown up hunting deer now turned weapons on neighbors. 3 Sloans were wounded, leg, shoulder, hand. Inside, Dway took a grazing wound. Then Junior made the decision that sealed their fate. He grabbed a kerosene lamp from the wall, lit it with shaking hands, and threw it through the window towards Sloan trucks. The lamp shattered. Flames spread across dry grass. Outside, Chester saw the fire and made his own terrible calculation. He grabbed a rag, stuffed it in his truck's gas tank, and lit it. The explosion was instantaneous. The fireball sent burning debris across the clearing. One piece landed on the church roof. The old wooden shingles caught immediately. Inside, the men smelled smoke, saw flames through ceiling cracks. They were trapped. The back door opened to woods where Sloans had positions. The front door led to the clearing and more Sloans. They'd boxed themselves in, and now the box was burning. "We have to get out," Dway screamed. "We go out, they'll cut us down," someone shouted back. The choice was between bullets and flames. The smoke got thicker, temperature rising. One of the younger men, Bobby Hall, only 19, was coughing violently. Then part of the burning roof collapsed, sending flaming debris down. 2 men were caught directly beneath. Their screams were immediate and terrible. The others scrambled, but now the back exit was blocked by fire. The front door was their only chance. Junior stumbled through smoke and pushed. The door wouldn't open. Outside, someone had pushed a truck against it, blocking their escape. Whether accident or intention didn't matter. They were sealed in. No. Junior threw his weight against it. Others joined him. Desperate men shoving against immovable metal. The smoke was blinding, the heat unbearable. Men dropped to the floor, trying to find air that wasn't there. At 10:23 a.m., Virgil finally got his men to cease fire. The clearing fell into horrible silence. Not peaceful, but the silence of men listening to other men die. Screams came from inside the church, then stopped. Smoke poured from every window. Several Sloans tried approaching to pull the truck away, but heat drove them back. They could only stand and watch as Pine Hollow Baptist became a crematorium. Chester Sloan fell to his knees, dry heaving. Virgil stood statue still, understanding what they'd done. At 10:31 a.m., the steeple collapsed, sending sparks into clear sky. The fire burned for 40 minutes. By 11:15 a.m., when Sheriff Moore arrived, the church was smoking ruins. The smell of burning wood and something worse hung in cool mountain air. It would be hours before they could search, but Moore already knew what they'd find. 10 bodies, 10 families destroyed, 30 years of blood culminating in one morning when honor mattered more than life. And the question that would haunt everyone who survived: where exactly was the line between justice and murder, between defending family and becoming monsters, between the men they'd been at sunrise and the men they'd become by noon? The trials came. Convictions followed. Chester Sloan got life without parole, died in prison 41 years later. Virgil served 15 years, was released, died alone on his porch staring at mountains that gave no answers. Earl Comez buried his 4 sons, then died of a broken heart 7 years later. His stone reads simply, "He tried, but here's what should terrify you." Junior Comez wasn't born a monster. He was made, pressure by pressure, day by day, until the unthinkable became inevitable. And somewhere right now, another Junior is being created. Another Chester. Another group of desperate men who believe honor is worth more than life. The machinery that ground through Knott County in 1975 is grinding elsewhere. We just don't know where yet, until the smoke rises, until we count bodies, until we ask how it came to this, when the signs were there all along.